Hey everyone, I'm Julian. I'm one of the co-founders of the idOS. Been in the identity space for quite some time, and I'm super excited to present the idOS to you guys, the identity layer for and of Web3. So, where are we at in terms of user onboarding? Right now, when users come to a certain dApp, and there is a regulatory reason for identity, or you want to make sure that there's not a bot coming in, you have a problem because there is no standard way, no easy implementation how to fix it. And it's not just that people have to do it again and again in ecosystems, but even across ecosystems, but even in ecosystems itself. If you go to a different dApp, you basically have to redo all of these things again. And that's quite a hassle, not just for users, but also for builders that want to implement something as fundamental as identity. So we believe that an identity layer is actually needed to cross the chasm and make user adoption go from the early innovators, the early adopters, to mainstream, to actually have implementations, to have financial modules that are super easy to use, super easy to implement, that just work across chains. It's not just Fractal, which is an identity company that we started quite some time ago, but also Kwil, that we're building the idOS together, also Near, Gnosis, Aleph Zero joining in this effort, because that's the most important part about identity, that it's not just another technical framework and technical solution that sounds good on paper, but something that actually gets adoption and actually gets used, because I'm quite tired of just talking about identity and not seeing it being implemented. So, what is the idOS? The idOS is two things. It's a decentralized storage and it's an access management protocol. So you have the nodes on one side that distribute user data that is user encrypted, and you have the access management protocol on the other that connects the user data to different applications that users control. Let me jump in and just explain from a user flow perspective, how does that actually work? So users need to verify their identity. They can also put in the identity themselves, but they go to an identity verifier who can be just any KYC company, for example, or a more decentralized way of confirming an identity. They get this data back, they encrypt it themselves, and they put it into the idOS. Now, any dApp, could be on Near, could be on Gnosis or Aleph Zero, can go to the idOS and request this data from the user. The user then gives an access grant to say, dear idOS, it's fine that this dApp can request this data from you. The user then decrypts the data, encrypts it again with a public key of the receiving dApp, and puts it back into the idOS. So you actually have data permanence, which is a big and important milestone. The idOS is four things. It is self-sovereign, it is chain agnostic, it's composable, and it's compliant. And those are quite important to us. It is self-sovereign because users really do control their data. They control who has access to that data, when it should be deleted, and when there is data that should be added. It is chain agnostic because any type of EVM or non-EVM key can be added to the idOS so that you can control the same profile from different chains. It is composable because others can build on top of it. So you can build an analytics suite. You can build an easier way how to onboard. You can build two-factor authentication. You can build recovery on top of it, and it will not just be available in one chain, but it will be able to be used on other chains as well. It's the data storage and access management layer, but there's so much more that can be built on top of it. And for us, one of the biggest and most interesting applications is finance, and I'll get to that a little bit later, why I'm so excited about it. So you can put KYC data, verified KYC data, into the idOS because it's compliant, because you're able to tell the nodes to delete it. There is a proof of state consensus that will force those nodes to actually delete your data and have the same state. But you can put any type of identity into the idOS, and we will hear a little bit later from our partners that there are already dApps that came up with new concepts of how to use the idOS that we were actually a bit surprised about, but that also makes sense. Like, for example, your browser preference if you want to have light or dark mode, right? But the best thing is that you can build on top of it. So I already said we've been talking about identity for ages. Vitalik is writing like every 3 years or so a blog article urging us as an industry to adopt decentralized identity now. And we kind of ignore that. And we do not have any decentralized identity applications that are just really widely used or actually adopted in operational systems. And we believe that this has a couple of reasons that were actually not met that allowed dApps and ecosystems to really adopt it. One is compliance. Because at the end of the day, if you have a compliance use case, like we have, for example, with Gnosis Pay, you need to make sure that a debit card is actually not running afoul of regulation to be able to issue it and to use it in the everyday world. And for us, this is quite important because, again, if you're thinking about the scaling part, only if we enable use cases that are touching people's everyday lives, we will see everyday people implementing or adopting it. The other thing is data permanence. So if you have a data wallet, which most of the industry has adopted right now, as a dApp you have two choices. You can take the data, put it into your central databases where it will not be updated, where it will not be interoperable, and you need to build the whole onboarding channel again and again, or you don't save the data at all. But if the user's gone, so is his or her data, which actually isn't great because there are so many use cases that you could do if you could still have access to that data even later on. The other thing is that it's chain agnostic. It's standalone. That's a little bit of an underrepresented factor if I need to ask wallets to adopt it, and ecosystems, and dApps, and users. That's going to be one hell of a job to be able to orchestrate all 4 of them. So for us, it was super important that it's a standalone product that even one dApp on any ecosystem can choose to use and be able to just implement it. And an end-to-end solution. So if you have one infrastructure layer, but it doesn't really work for the purpose that you need it for, which is actually user onboarding, then you will just not use it, and it will just be a nice technical implementation. This is the thing that I am personally super excited about. And it's just one application, but for me it's one of the most important applications. I started my career, unfortunately, in banking 3 days before Lehman Brothers collapsed in Frankfurt. And I went there, trust me on that, because I thought that the financial system is rather meritocratic. And I found out that it definitely isn't, and there are so many it's basically an industry of gatekeepers. What we're seeing right now is that with the help of identity, but also different financial modules and some of the partners here actually pushing that realm, that we're building up modules that you can just take and plug into your application without even having any compliance knowledge. You just use them as as a module. And for that, identity is quite crucial because we need to allow users to go from one module to another without having to re-KYC all the time. That stack is so powerful just from a cost perspective. Imagine offering your users a way to have a bank account, have a card, and it costs you nothing to actually implement that. You can have like a Revolut type of offering that is pretty much free. And that's not us building on top of that and enabling use cases that we don't even see today. So, I'm done having a monologue, and I want to ask the good guys from Kwil on stage to actually present what we have built, because it's going to be live. Give it up for Luke.
Awesome. Thank you, Julian. You mind if I get the clicker from you? Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming out here today. My name is Luke. I am part of the founding team at Kwil. And so at Kwil, we make decentralized relational databases. And today, I'll be walking you through how the idOS stores and manages its data on a decentralized network of nodes. In this demo, I'll show you 3 key things about the idOS. 1 is how it is end-to-end encrypted. 2 is how it is decentralized and Byzantine fault-tolerant. And 3 is how it is user-centric rather than wallet-centric, making it truly one of the first cross-platform and cross-ecosystem identity protocols. So to start here, I'm in my terminal. I will just spin up a local idOS network. These are 3 nodes that'll come up pretty quickly. They are all managing and syncing state. We see they come online fairly quickly, and they start mining blocks. Once these are up, we can flip over to the idOS data dashboard. Right now in the data dashboard, you can authenticate with both Near and MetaMask, and in the future, there will be more wallets and more ecosystems added. Right now, I'm logging in with my MetaMask account, and we can see already in the idOS, there are 2 credentials for my profile, my passport and my driver's license. But let's imagine a scenario where I need a more sophisticated credential, maybe a verifiable credential to access some lending protocol on Aleph Zero. I can go to my KYC provider, Fractal ID, and ask them to issue me a verifiable credential. So in an interface that I'm sure will look much nicer than this, Fractal ID can go conduct a KYC on me and add that credential into my profile. So here, for the sake of the demo, I'm just adding in an empty template for a verifiable credential. But Fractal ID will go and they will add this to my account on my behalf. And then if we flip back to the idOS, we can see that this credential is here. I can authenticate with the idOS, and it comes back in the same form that it was added to the platform. So when it went in, it was plain text, but when it came back out, it was plain text. But you may be wondering, what does this data look like to the node specifically? Well, if we flip over to the nodes itself, we can query the nodes database and see what does this data look like. So you'll have to forgive the markdown table here. It's a little too wide for the terminal. But what you see on the bottom in the ciphertext is what the node and the network sees. So this brings me to the first main point of the idOS, is how it is end-to-end encrypted. Before data goes into the system, it is encrypted, and when the user retrieves the data from the system, they decrypt it. But only the user can see who, when, and where their credentials can be seen. Now to the second point of the idOS, how it is decentralized and Byzantine fault-tolerant, let's go back to the idOS data dashboard. So the second part on the dashboard are the wallets. And in the idOS, you can have multiple wallets that authenticate to your account. Right now, in my account, I only have one wallet, this 0x wallet. And we can also go back and we can check the network, and we can see that the network also has the same data. So the entire network has one wallet. We'll query node 1. So just type in the node 1 address. And we can see that node 1 returns one wallet, node 2 returns one wallet, and node 3 returns one wallet. But what happens if a node acts maliciously or goes offline? Well, here I'll flip over to Docker Desktop where I have the nodes running, and I'll shut down that third node. So now this node is offline. It's not receiving any new data that comes into the network. We can go back to the idOS data dashboard and add some new data to the network. So in this case, I'm going to add a new wallet for my idOS account. So I'll just paste in another one of my accounts that I have in my MetaMask wallet. I'll sign to authenticate this into the idOS, sign again to re-authenticate to retrieve the data. And we can see now that my idOS account shows 2 wallets in the system. So these are 2 wallets that are now on the network. If we flip back to querying each node, we can query node 1, it has 2 wallets. Query node 2, it has 2 wallets. But node 3 doesn't return any data because it was offline and it missed that new wallet that came into the system. But we can go back and we can turn back on the third node. And once this node comes back online, it automatically resumes the syncing process, and it will resume and resync the state with the rest of the network. So we can query node 3, and we can see that it receives the same state as the rest of the network, even though it was offline when that state was created. And so this is the second main point about the idOS, is how it is decentralized and Byzantine fault tolerant. This is significant because it means that dApps will always have persistent access to their users. Right now, as Julian mentioned earlier, if a dApp wants to make sure that they have composable and persistent access to their user data, they have to have a centralized copy of the database. Not only is that against the ethos of Web3, but it also creates a massive honeypot and a vector for attack. With the idOS, users and dApps can be guaranteed that they will always have access to their users in a persistent and compliant way. Now to the third point that I want to show in this demo, how the idOS is user-centric rather than wallet-centric. We can flip back over to the data dashboard and log out with this wallet that we are currently logged in with. So I'll log out, we'll be back at the home screen, and now I will log in with the other wallet that I added to my profile. So we can sign to authenticate, and we can see that this looks pretty much the same, actually exactly the same, minus the wallet that's logged in the top left, as what we saw earlier. We can also flip over to the credentials tab, and we can go to that verifiable credential that we add and decrypt the credential, even though we're signed in with a separate wallet. So this brings me to the third main point about the idOS, is how it is user-centric rather than wallet-centric. You can add multiple different wallets across multiple different ecosystems, making this truly one of the first cross-platform, cross-blockchain, and cross-ecosystem identity protocols. This means that you, the user, only have to authenticate in the idOS, and then when you go to a dApp on Aleph, a dApp on Near, a dApp on Ethereum, and many more ecosystems, you will be able to have the same credential and the same KYC. So this concludes a very brief demo of the idOS, but if there are 3 things you take away, remember: 1, end-to-end encrypted; 2, decentralized and Byzantine fault tolerant; and 3, user-centric, not wallet-centric, making it one of the first truly cross-platform identity protocols. Thank you.
I mean, obviously we are super excited about the tech behind it, right? But it wouldn't be anything without actual usage. We've seen so many empty deserts of great identity implementation. So you could argue that even the more important part here are our partners. One is here, it's Altan from Near, and we just went live together with Near last week, and I'm pretty excited to welcome you on stage and hear about the use cases that we'll be seeing soon, or will actually
probably soon,
live.
yeah, like very soon, yeah. So, hi everybody, I'm Altan. I'm actually Turkish, so great to have you guys here. I work for the Near Foundation. I used to be a partner engineer, now do business development, which is kind of meh, like it's after being an engineer, it's quite disappointing, but so just about to really want to talk about Near, right? So what does Near do? Well, Near started as a layer 1 blockchain, and we've started sort of like improving ourselves to be the blockchain operating system, which means sort of like a multi-chain operating system for basically anything built on a blockchain. We've been working, I guess, with like, how long it's been? Six months maybe? Yeah, so they've been building sort of on the boss, and we really need a KYC layer. We have a lot of sort of users coming from Sweatcoin, it's like Kaiching now, and a bunch of different governance stuff that we're doing with NDC, where you actually have to prove someone that they're really human, right? So you can't just vote. Like there's a lot of bots in the internet, so you really don't want them to kind of corrupt the governance. So that's one use case that we always talk about. And then the other one is Near Tasks, which actually Near was an AI company, so it started as a Near AI. And the idea was to sort of this decentralized marketplace for data labeling. And eventually turned out to be a blockchain. So we still kept that Near crowd, which is basically sort of a marketplace where you can provide tasks, and there's taskers, right? So there's taskers come in and they do the tasks. So that's what become Near Tasks today. It's a separate sort of company, and there it's the same use case where you have to prove that you are human to be able to do the data labeling, because you can also corrupt data labeling as well, but bots. So, but I think there's 14 applications that we currently think about in idOS, and there's probably more given our consumer-centric approach. So that probably sums everything up.
Thank you. For Near, it's all about users and really making sure that it's not just active wallets or tons of bots, but actually verified users, right? Like building a pool for users to show that they're human to interact, all the way from voting to being able to interact with certain dApps. With Gnosis, and I guess we'll hear some more soon, we have exactly the use case that I was talking about earlier. It's Gnosis Pay, it's a self-custody debit card going to be shipped soon, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I think we'll hear a little bit about it soon.
Hey guys, sorry I'm not Turkish, even though people say that I look like Turkish. I hope that counts for something. Well, my name is Mateus, I'm from Gnosis Pay, and I'm super excited about idOS in general. Like, I think it's one of the things that is enabling us to do the Gnosis Pay card, which is the decentralized card, where you're going to be able to expand directly from like your wallet into like any merchant out there. So like you're going to be able to use all the 80 million like merchants that like use Visa to use your card to do a transaction. So if you want to buy a coffee or something, you're going to be able to expand directly over there. And to be able to do that, you need to do QIC, right? So like this is traditional banking, this is how the world runs. And it runs for a reason, right? You need to identify who is doing that thing, so you make sure that you're not putting money or allowing people to make transactions that shouldn't. And the way that like idOS helps us to do that is that like we are able to do the whole onboarding using it. The person is able to provide all the documents, but they're still in full control of it. So from time to time, we're going to need to do checks, and like the regulators and so on need to make sure that that person is still like who it says it is, that like it doesn't go like in any sanction or anything like that. And with that, we have the ability to do so. And it's one thing that you need to remember, that nowadays, in traditional bank, this is a huge cost. This is a huge overhead in terms of compliance, how you handle that, like how you make sure that you have the update documents that like the guy needs to do, and so on. And with that, you solve that problem, because you have the ability to have something that like the user can control. You can give the permission, he can verify, and you can give like as it goes. So it provides a better experience for everyone in the ecosystem.
Thank you. What Gnosis Pay does is actually be composable themselves, and which is something that we can see. Usually you onboard to banks and you're basically in their realm, and then in that realm they can sell you different products because they don't need to re-KYC you. But if you're a modularized system, you need to potentially do it again, but they partnered up with Monerium to not just give you the card, but the bank account with it. And it's just one click to also jump over. Aleph Zero, Anthony is here somewhere. There he is. Very different use case, very privacy focused. I think that this is something that we'll hear more about today already, and they are building something that they just released as in talked about, or a bit more. It's like an 80-page paper that details how that can actually work. We're talking about privacy pools that still enable privacy while doing transactions.
Correct. Hi everyone, I'm Anthony from Aleph Zero. And yeah, we just essentially thought that the space needs more scientific papers, so that's what we did instead of building a product. No, honestly, we're just very academia heavy, at least initially when we start some new project. This is what happened with Aleph Zero itself, which is based on essentially a new consensus protocol, the substrate stack, and it's really fast, really cheap L1. That in itself is not unique anymore. It's sort of, we think of this as an industry standard. And then we started to think, how can we really improve on the privacy aspect, because it's a crucial component of the entire ecosystem. And if we look at the landscape as it is now, what we see is that whenever there is a bridge hack, it ends up in, well, no longer Tornado Cache, but for instance Railgun. And then Chainalysis estimated that I think around 22% of all the funds that end up in the privacy solutions are essentially coming from illicit sources. So with idOS, really, it's a way to make KYC or identity verification or KYB bearable, more aligned with the ethos of Web3 and essentially UX friendly. Because if we are able to build something that we call quote unquote compliant privacy, as privacy itself is not non-compliant, but then again, as a user, you want to prove that you're not on sanctions list, the funds are not coming from an illicit source, and then also go into the privacy system, go out, and then don't have issues with off-ramping, then that's where we see idOS coming in, and effectively making privacy or enabling privacy on-chain to be more usable across not only our ecosystem, but the space in general.